Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, I promise there are huge developments obviously taking place in Minnesota. I will definitely cover it. You have my word. But there is now a new front in this confederacy among blue states, blue cities, sanctuary cities, in their rebellion and insurrection against the federal government and against ICE. And now Maine, that's right, sleepy, quiet, mostly rural Maine on the northern tip of New England has now become, or is now becoming, to be more accurate, the new Minnesota. And so here is now the absolute latest. ICE now has unleashed a targeted operation. They want to capture 1,400 violent, criminal, illegal aliens that have been hiding out in Maine under the moonbat governor, Janet Mills. Now, the first point that needs to be stressed, Jeff, why 1,400? Why have they set their sights on that number? Because those are the detainers and the warrants that have now been signed by judges that they know there's 1,400 convicted criminals, illegal aliens, many of them murderers, rapists, child molesters, drug traffickers, sex offenders, sex traffickers, and so they want to get these 1,400 off the streets. They know who they are. They just now are having a hard time finding them. Why? Because in the sanctuary city of Portland, Maine, in the sanctuary city of Lewiston, and in particular, Lewiston now has one of the biggest Somali communities in the United States. In fact, as I was researching for today's show, there are now almost as many Somalis, illegal alien Somalis, in Maine as there are in Minneapolis. And so you now see the sanctuary city mayor of Lewiston, the sanctuary city mayor of Portland. They have now come out and said they will not cooperate with ICE. They will do everything in their power to obstruct ICE as they try to go into communities, illegal alien communities, to try to capture, detain, arrest, and deport these violent criminal illegals. The governor of Maine, Janet Mills, hardcore moonbat, staunch anti-never-Trumper, is now urging all-out resistance against ICE. She has now ordered local police to not cooperate with ICE, to basically follow the Minneapolis model. Don't give them any backup. Don't give them any information. If they get under attack or under assault, you stand back and do absolutely nothing. Furthermore, the governor of Maine, to me, I don't know how this is legal, frankly, but anyway, let that go, is urging illegal aliens to evade ICE, as is the mayor of Portland and as is the mayor of Lewiston. So they're now urging illegal aliens to essentially now try to escape ICE, evade ICE. They are siding with foreigners, criminals, illegals against legitimate law enforcement and the citizens of the United States. As I said on X last night, it's another insurrection. And now it's coming closer to us in New England. And as you can tell, it's spreading. Now, furthermore, and this is very important, ICE now, as they're trying to make these arrests, now say that what they're seeing in Maine, especially in Portland and Lewiston, is identical to what they saw in Minneapolis. Meaning now that you have Democratic officials led by the governor, okay, in this case Mills, not Waltz, but Mills, encouraging anti-ICE activists, vigilantes, and agitators to create ice watch networks, sort of very similar to what we saw in Minneapolis with Renee Good and her wife. And their job now is to be on the lookout for ICE agents to see, or a potential ICE raid. If they hear anything about a pending ICE raid, or if they see ICE vehicles or ICE in their neighborhood, they are then to immediately start blowing whistles, blowing their horns, messaging or text messaging to let the illegals know ICE is coming, get out, get out, get out. Furthermore, there is now growing talk that they will use the same obstructionist tactics as in Minnesota. That means taking cars, blocking ICE on the road, assaulting ICE, throwing bottles at ICE, projectiles at ICE, protesting ICE with their bodies. In other words, they want to make sure that the operation is a failure and that they will impede and obstruct ICE at every single turn. Now, on top of all of this, you now have the governor of Maine, unbelievably, coming out and now saying that they're targeting 1,400 people in Maine. She's now claiming that these judges, these warrants and detainers are made up. Remember, this is a state of, what is it, over 1 million people, okay? And she's saying there's no way that we have 1,400 illegal aliens who happen to be criminals. It's impossible. They're making it up. Really? Roll cut 16, Mike.
I'd be shocked if they found 1,400 people with criminal charges against them. But what we're hearing is not that anyway. What we're hearing is that people with no criminal backgrounds are being detained and subject to perhaps deportation or at least arrest. People who are being torn from their families and from young children. People who are part of the workforce here in Maine, a workforce that we desperately need and desperately value.
I mean, this is sickening. So, there's so many ways you can destroy this argument. This is pathetic. Okay, first of all, there are 1,400 because they have the warrants and the detainers for them. They have their names, they have the countries that they're from, they're here illegally, and they have convictions. So I don't know what this woman is talking about, okay? But let's say it's not 1,400. Let's say it's 1,200. Okay, it's 1,000. It's 800. It's 500. You mean to tell me you want convicted rapists roaming the streets of Portland or Lewiston? You want convicted child molesters and sex predators? What, you want them near the parks and schools of Portland and Maine? But you want gangbangers who are into the drug trafficking and sex trafficking and prostitution business? So you want them operating on the streets of Maine? And you're the freaking governor? You should be giving them their addresses, saying, let us help you. Who are you looking for? Okay, what was their known address? Let's give it to you so you can arrest them. Okay, well, maybe they're always on the run. Well, where are they collecting their food stamps? Because a lot of them are on food stamps. They're on welfare. Let me help you out. Usually where they collect their food stamps is where they're living. You can come and arrest them. Instead, look at this. Look at this. No cooperation. ICE, get out of Maine. We don't want you. We don't need you. And they're arresting some people who haven't committed crimes. Well, no. If they came into this country illegally, it's a crime. It's illegal to be illegal. But they're important to our economy. Do you know how many legal immigrants would love to come and work their rear end off to be part of the United States? People who are vetted, people who do it the right way, people who respect our laws and our sovereignty. No, 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 no. Let me tell you what the real story is, okay? And I promise I'm going to get to this in greater detail in the next segment. What is now being discovered in Maine, listen to this, is literally the exact type and pattern of fraud, the massive multi-billion-dollar fraud that has been exposed now in Minnesota. Daycares, home health care companies, Somali pirates and fraudsters, usually using the same shell companies. In many cases, they're the same people, literally the same people who are running scams in Minnesota are running the exact same scams in Maine. And the Democratic Party knows about it. Janet Mills knows about it. And either they're implicated or they're deliberately turning a blind eye. Okay, my friends, so Maine now is quickly becoming the new Minnesota. You now have ICE agents in New England, obviously in Maine, engaged in what's called the Operation Catch of the Day. Obviously, Maine is a seafood economy, and so they're playing off of the fact that, you know, the catch of the day, if you want to order food at a restaurant or whatever. Anyway, they're targeting at least 1,400 violent, criminal, illegal aliens. They have warrants and detainers for their arrest in predominantly Portland and Lewiston. They are now meeting massive resistance from the governor of Maine, from the sanctuary city mayors of Portland and Lewiston, and now from anti-ICE activists and agitators on the ground who are using almost identical techniques to what you're seeing in Minneapolis. Now, what is now becoming very apparent, and there's no disputing this, is that there is a widening welfare fraud scandal that is stretching from the Midwest to New England. And what's happening is in Maine, slowly but surely, like peeling different layers off of the rotten onion, is that it's now becoming apparent, almost identical to what took place in Minnesota. In some cases involving the very same people. Somalis who came to this country claiming to be refugees, and they're not refugees. They're fraudsters, grifters, conmen, and thieves. And so what they're doing in Maine, listen to this, is they're deliberately abusing taxpayer-funded programs you and I pay for, that have very loose or no oversight or monitoring whatsoever. And so, for example, like in Minnesota, there's politically connected nonprofit networks that are billing Medicaid in particular for non-existent services. And we're now looking at hundreds of millions in Maine, if not potentially billions and billions of dollars. Large-scale abuse. And so, for example, just to show you what the fraud is like, what they do is in Maine, there are now clusters of home care companies. These are people that allegedly go to the homes of the elderly, the poor, the disabled, the vulnerable, those with special needs, whatever. And they're supposed to be providing home health care, take care of these people at their homes. And then they bill Medicaid. And of course, nobody's checking, are these so-called home health care companies real? Are they really going to homes? Are they providing any services? Are they actually doing what they claim to be doing? And all they do is they just bill and bill and bill. And the Democrats just keep paying them money. The more they bill, the more they pay. And so now we're talking about fraud. Just to give you an example, this is how bad the fraud is. One example, we could go on and on. They, in one location, they found 10 home care companies registered at a single building, single address. There's no business activity going on whatsoever. In fact, the very same people that are operating these home healthcare companies in Maine, I'm talking the exact same people who own them, own this different ones in Minnesota. Similar entities in Minnesota. Now, and not only that, they're usually right beside a business where you can wire money to Somalia. I'm telling you, you can't make this up. So here, let me just give you an example, okay? Hat tip to News Nation. News Nation did their own investigation. The CNN won't do it. I can guarantee you this. NBC, CBS, ABC, MS Now, they won't touch this. The Boston Globe, they won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. So, this is in Portland, Maine. There is a building. Apparently, there were 10 home health care businesses that were paying rent at that single address. Okay, they pay a little bit of rent. And that's their quote-unquote operation, their base of operation. There's only one problem. Here's the landlord. There's no one there. I mean, sure, they pay rent, but the rental offices are empty, and there's nobody there. Roll cut 15. Mike. Are we having technical problems, Mike?
Do you think these businesses are actually legit businesses?
Some, yes, but some I highly question. Nobody's ever here, and if it was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but when there's 10, I've had as many as 12 or 13 probably before. The 5-star, I took the son out to do it because I'm trying to rent the office.
Okay, that was the landlord. The landlord. I mean, he's taking their rent money. And he said openly, he goes, no, there's nobody ever here. Ever. It's obvious. It's a fraud. Ever. Now, I'm not talking, they're billing, I don't know, $50,000, which is a crime. Please don't get me wrong. Millions and millions and millions per company. Here, let me just give you one example. Okay? I could go on and on. I'm just going to give you one. This is the Gateway. It's called Gateway Community Services. It's founded by a Somali refugee. This so-called organization, Home Health Care, got $5 million. $5 million from Governor Mills. $5 million. They don't clean a single house. They don't take care of a single patient. They don't go to a single home. Furthermore, Governor Mills has given them millions in no-bid contracts. But of course, they line her campaign coffers, and God knows who else in Maine. Okay, ICE now begins to shift its attention. Obviously, Minneapolis and Minnesota are still ground zero, no question. But Maine, yes, sleepy Maine. It is now, there's a big Somali African community. Many of them are illegal aliens, on top of others, obviously. They're not just Somalis. In Lewiston and Portland, a lot of illegal aliens now have made their way up into Maine, and it's starting to become obvious why. Massive fraud of our taxpayer-funded programs, welfare programs, and it's now starting to become exposed, just like we witnessed in Minnesota. So I spoke about a company. It is, if you can call it that, it's a non-profit, Gateway Community Services. It is founded by an alleged Somali refugee. I'm telling you, he's a scammer. Okay? He's a scammer. I'm telling you. Every year, under Governor Janet Mills, Gateway Community Services was given at least $5 million taxpayer dollars to do home health care, allegedly, to go to the homes of elderly or poor people or disabled people and take care of them, their health, give them their medications, give them treatment, also do transportation, provide groceries, provide cleaning services. None of that has happened. None of it. So they put up this fraudulent address in a building. They pay $500 a month rent or whatever it is, the scam, and there's nobody there. There's not a single employee. There's nothing. There's not a desk. There's not a printer. There's not a fax machine. There's nothing. And they do nothing. And all they do is bill Main Care, which is the state's Medicaid program. And they bill and bill and bill to up to the tune, this just one company alone, $5 million a year, plus Governor Mills, and she's a crook. I'm telling you, the woman's a crook. Has given this one company millions of dollars in no bid contracts. And of course, Gateway Community Services, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. And the kickbacks come in terms of massive campaign contributions to top Democratic Party figures like Janet Mills, but others across Maine. Now, they're not just doing it for home care. Apparently now we are looking at potentially billions, certainly hundreds of millions of dollars for all of these fake services like running daycares. There's no daycare, like in Minnesota. School lunch programs. There's no lunch for the kids. They're billing the state and these taxpayer-funded programs, and they just keep getting money, and they don't do anything in return. And we're the ones paying for it. Now, a reason why many reporters are reluctant to investigate this is because the moment you expose it, they scream racism. The Democratic Party has taught them, just yell racist, racist, racist. And everybody goes, boo, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and they run away. But the fact of the matter is, we're now looking at billions of dollars that have been plundered, pillaged, and stolen. And they're doing this increasingly. I believe it's in every state. You want my honest opinion? I think it's clearly in every state. At a minimum, it's in every blue state. And so to show you how disgusting this is, they're running daycare services either from non-existent places or from, say, laundromats, even in Maine, like they did in Minneapolis, or some Somali restaurant. But there's no children there. But I'll tell you what they do have. They're right next to places where you can wire money to Somalia. And the CEO of Gateway Community Services, who is very well connected, by the way, to Governor Mills. Well, listen to this. As he's running these nonprofits, making tens and tens of millions of dollars in fraudulent payments through Main Care. Okay, stealing. They're stealing. He's campaigning for the presidency of Jubaland. Jeff, what the hell is Jubaland? It's apparently a semi-autonomous region in southern Somalia. So this is the quote-unquote, he's such a refugee, quote-unquote. Because, refugee is supposed to be in fear of your life, right? You're supposed to be fleeing a dictatorship, political, religious persecution. He's so afraid of Somalia, he wants to run to be president for one of their regions. That's how afraid he is. You can't make this up. Now, it's not just the rampant fraud, which is why Mills is freaking out that ICE now is conducting ICE raids. That's why she's in a complete panic. Because now as they start arresting these Somali pirates, some are probably going to start talking, to make a deal. As they say, sing like a canary. And this fraud is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's going to implicate more and more Democrats. But she's also got another problem. The other problem is that it appears that this is a foreign-run operation. Like in Minnesota, you now have foreign countries who are sending in people into the United States under false pretenses, committing immigration fraud, like Ilhan Omar is a classic example, claiming to be a quote-unquote refugee, when in fact they're there as an agent of a foreign government or a foreign power in order to steal and milk our welfare systems, our taxpayer-funded programs, pocket the money, steal, or ship it back to the homeland for political operations over there, like this guy who's going to probably be the next president of Jubaland, whatever the hell that is, in Somalia. And it's not just the Somalis that are doing it. Mexicans are doing it. Ecuadorians are doing it. From Laos, they're doing it. China is doing it, as Peter Schweitzer points out in his book, The Invisible Coup, which I want to get to soon, because I want him on this show. So this is now being done deliberately. All of this is happening while we have to have fewer social services for our own people, because they're straining our welfare system to the breaking point, because there's so much fraud. So we're working harder, we're paying more in taxes to fund these lavish social programs, most of whom now aren't even going to our own people who really need it and should get it, but instead it's being stolen by these parasites and leeches and scam artists and frauds, these crooks and thieves, who the Democrats have deliberately allowed to come in state after state after state. And by the way, if you want to know why Republicans now can barely win an election in Maine, look at that army of third world migrants that they have imported in Portland and Lewiston. What is behind all of this? And the reason why you are seeing such ferocious opposition from the left and the Democratic Party in particular is that they are engaged, as the left is engaged all across Europe, in what's called the Great Replacement. It's not a theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a reality and a fact. The Democrats openly admit it. That's why it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. The Democrats openly admit what their goal is. Universities, academia, the media, they openly admit, yeah, this is the ultimate goal. What is the ultimate goal? To bring in enough third world peoples into the United States, especially through unlimited illegal immigration, that it will destroy white America. To be more accurate, to eventually replace and supplant white America. Maine was repeatedly said by the Democrats to be, quote unquote, too white. Their words, not mine. And so what was their plan? Send in an army of third world Somalis and Africans into big cities, or their bigger cities, like Portland and Lewiston. And then you import a massive voting bloc, and that keeps the Democrats in power, who then import even more third world illegals. You put them all on welfare. You don't care how much money they steal or scam, how much welfare fraud and abuse takes place. And then you bring in even more, and even more, and even more, and before you know it, Maine is finished. That's the plan that they're executing to a T. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, I want to get to the phone lines, I promise. 617-266-6868. I just want to read a couple of texts. Molto importante, very important to our discussion. We're really now cracking open the lid on what's happening in Maine, and I believe now in states all across the United States, especially blue states, Democrat-run states. So this is from a friend of mine who, let's just put it this way, knows Maine very, very well. So this is very solid information. Jeff, it's even more pernicious and disgraceful than what you mentioned. Janet Mills, who is a corrupt hag, and Gateway Community Services go back many, many years. Remember a couple years ago, now listen to this, when a man with, I remember this, when a man with PTSD shot and killed 18 people at a bowling alley in Maine. After that tragedy, generous Americans all across the country, and especially within the state of Maine, opened their hearts and wallets and contributed millions of dollars to help the grieving families of the victims. They did so through a website created by Janet Mills, the governor, who siphoned off a third of donations to Gateway Community Services and the Somalis. Holy mackerel. Oh, my God. Oh, where's Pam Bondi? Oh, my God. You want to talk about disgusting fraud? Anyway, my friend I did not know this. Okay, I did not know this. This is what my friend continues. And Jeff, this kind of corruption with the Somalis in particular has been going on for decades, especially after then President Obama targeted Maine with so-called refugees from that African hellhole. Maine is not Minnesota East. Minnesota is Maine West. Interesting. See, I'm looking at it as Maine is Minnesota East, as in, Minnesota is the epicenter and now it's moving, towards us, eastward. My friend is saying, no. You got it all wrong, buddy. Jeff, Kuhner man. No. It's Minnesota is Maine West. Interesting. Okay, let me, this is another one, 603, and makes an absolutely brilliant point. Jeff, it should now be no surprise to anyone when we find in Maine a perfect carbon copy duplicate of the same fraud that has been uncovered in Minnesota. The Somali community, regardless of location, is very tight-knit. And even though these two particular communities are in separate states, they communicate, they coordinate, and they network. And because of this, there is an absolute certainty that if you have an established Somali community, especially in a blue or purple state or city, you will find the same rampant fraud. It's just wash, rinse, and repeat. Jeff, what's the definition of La Cosa Nostra? It's this little thing of ours. Well, Jeff, this is the little thing of theirs. And let me just add this last point. The Somalians, and this is very true, please think about this. The Somalians didn't learn how to pull off this fraud on their own. They've had to have had help, i.e. the Democrats, because it takes knowing the system in order to game the system. And that has to come from people on the inside. Bingo. And as many of you are pointing out, okay, many of you, and Jeff, let's just bring it all the way back to Massachusetts. And that's why they don't want that state audit. And it doesn't matter how many ballot initiatives you pass like we did in 2024 with over 73% support. Bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. They will not allow us here to open up the books and audit the state legislature and their spending. Because I'm telling you, you're going to see exactly the same kind of rampant welfare fraud and abuse in Massachusetts to many of these illegal alien communities, like you see in Maine, like you see in Minnesota, like you see in Illinois, like you see in New York, like you see in California, and I could go on and on. And in every state, there's one common denominator. It's run by Democrats. Now, what is interesting, because it's just 2 states we're looking at, okay? So it's an easier sample size to compare and contrast. The same CEOs of the same companies operate in both states. It's the same type of fraud. It's the same pattern. The daycares, the school lunch programs, these home health companies, I put that in quotation marks, these nonprofits, and no oversight, no monitoring of where the money is going, no investigation, none. All of it tied to the Democratic Party, and they're just cutting check after check after check after check. All of them, by the way, putting multiple companies on one address. And you go there and there's nobody there. Nobody there. Literally, nobody there. Or daycare centers and it's a freaking restaurant. Or it's a laundromat. Or it's an apartment and there's no children inside. And they're, and each one is billing the state 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars. And all that money is sloshing around. And when ICE decides to do an operation, suddenly Janet Mills acts like it's an invasion. And now it's all hands on deck, local police stand down, don't cooperate with ICE. If they get attacked and assaulted, you do nothing. You don't arrest anybody. Now they're setting up ICE networks, ICE Watch networks, warn everybody, the illegals, the ICE is coming, ICE is coming, help them evade capture. By the way, in Portland now, the biggest school system in the state, their superintendent, another fraud, is now giving permission to illegal alien children. You can do online learning. In other words, don't go to school. And we know, by the way, online learning has been a disaster under COVID, but who cares? Now it's protect the illegal alien parents at all costs. So ICE, for example, if they know a kid is the child of an illegal alien, they can follow that child home and then arrest the illegal alien parents, especially violent criminal illegals. So now they're saying, no, stay home. You can do online learning. To keep these criminals from even walking the streets, listen to this. You now have anti-ICE networks where they're buying them groceries, diapers, and they go straight to their homes. And they say, here, don't even walk the streets. And the governor has said we will not share any information with ICE. So good luck finding these violent, criminal, illegal aliens you're trying to target and detain and arrest. It's an insurrection. But it's an insurrection in order to cover up massive, massive fraud. Fraud that implicates the Democrats. Now, I'm telling you, it can't be a coincidence. When you have, as 603 put it, a duplicate carbon copy of what's happening in Minnesota, in Maine, and now in other states, this is coordinated, this is organized, this is beyond state levels. This is something the Democrats have been doing now for God knows how many years. Now you know why they fear Trump. Now you know why they hate Trump. And now you know why they fear and hate ICE. You expose this, and you expose the greatest fraud in the history, the greatest theft. We are talking potentially trillions of dollars over 10 years. Okay? We're looking at $700 billion at least a year. And remember, this is Medicaid we're stealing from. It's supposed to go to poor people. Daycares to take care of young kids. Transportation to drive the disabled to school. And either they're not doing it, or they're claiming they're driving 20 disabled kids when they're only driving one, so they just keep billing and billing and billing and billing. Or school lunch programs to feed the poor and the hungry, children. And nobody's being fed. And these people are scum, man. They have to cover it up. They have to cover it up with everything they have. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let's go to lines are loaded. So let me just ask you this. What do you make now of A, the massive fraud that has been uncovered in Maine? What do you make of the fact now that the governor, Janet Mills, is calling essentially for an insurrection, like in Minnesota? And is this now a coincidence? Or do you believe this kind of fraud is now being replicated deliberately by Democrats in state after state after state? Are we now sitting on the greatest welfare fraud scandal maybe in human history? If you're looking at numbers in terms of sheer dollar numbers, there's been no greater fraud scandal ever. There's no question. 617-266-6868. Mags in New Hampshire. You're going to kick us off, Mags. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. And as always, thank you for everything that you do, and God bless you. Happy Friday, everybody. Listen, this fraud, I believe, has been going on for over 18 years in Maine. 18 years ago, I had an issue in Maine, in Lewiston, Maine, with the Somali men. The police had to come and everything. These people are evil, dirty, rotten people, and they could care less about this country. They never assimilated, ever, and they have no intentions upon doing so. That's why we have the problems we have, I believe, in this country, because we left doing the right thing when we allowed people to come in here. Years ago, they had to be vetted, learn English, do all the things that they needed to do. They had to have a sponsor. We need to go back to this. We need to go back to where the United States of America is number one, not everybody else. And there's no question about how all these Democrats are filthy rich because they've been ripping us off all the time. And I'm sure there's Republicans that have too. Don't get me wrong. But these people have been ripping the people that they're supposed to be working for off for years and years and years. It's disgusting. And every single one of them that has any money in the bank should be all the money should be taken away, stripped from them, and they should be going through, as I've said over and over again, military tribunals. They're treasonous against our country, and they could care less.
Mags, if I'm getting too personal, please tell me. I promise I won't be offended. But you said you had issues or problems with Somali men up in Maine. Were they harassing you? Was that the problem you had?
What happened, Jeff? It's not too personal. I have been on the road, for 35 years. I was up there. It was early in the morning. It was during the week. I came across a vehicle that had their flashes on at a major intersection, and I happened to look in, and it was a woman with children in this van. So I pulled up behind her like a good American patriot would do, put my flashes on, got out, and said to her, this is a major intersection. We need to get your children out of this van. I don't want somebody to come up from behind you and hit you and blah, blah, blah. The woman didn't speak any English, but she knew that I was there to help her. We got out of the vehicle. By the time I got her and her two children out of the vehicle and onto the side of the road, because I was willing to put them in my vehicle and take them wherever they needed to go, but she did not want to do that. She obviously knew that there would be a problem. By the time we got them on the corner, on the side.
I'm sorry, Max, we lost you. What happened? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Mags, please, I didn't hear that. Mags, please don't swear. We had to temporarily dump that. I could be fined millions of dollars. So please just tell your story without any of the swearing. So, Mags, you're trying to help this poor woman and her child or children. You want to get her out of the car. You get her out of the car. And within a matter of minutes, there's like 15 Somali men who descend on the scene. Please pick it up from there, Mags.
Yelling at me, and not in English, okay? You could tell they were very angry. Honestly, Jeff, for the very first time in my life, I was afraid. Thankfully, somebody must have seen what was happening, and within probably 2 minutes, the Lewiston police were there. They came right around me, got me back in my vehicle, and told me to leave. Obviously, they've known about these problems for years also. These people have no intent upon anything that they don't want their woman anywhere near American women because they want them enslaved like they have for years.
Oh, so I was going to ask you, why were they so upset? I mean, you helped this woman, her children, you got her out of this, car, which was a potentially dangerous situation. You think they would be grateful. But you're saying they were enraged because they don't want their women to have any contact with an American woman, correct?
Yeah.
Incredible. Mags, I mean, I know I'm asking you to guess now. Did they strike you as legal or illegal?
Oh, I'm sure they were illegal back then. I'm sure they were all illegal up there. I have to say that Janet Mills is a disgusting woman. She still is okay with men playing in women's sports.
Incredible.
That state, unfortunately, because of her, has been taken over by a lot of illegals. And I think the fraud, like you said earlier, is going to be much bigger than Minnesota. I think this has been going on in Maine for over 20 years, like your friend said. It's a very scary world we live in, but if we started pressing charges against all these government employees, all these people that are supposed to be working for us, okay, that have millionaires, i.e. Elizabeth Warren, Markey, the people from our area, this would stop.
Oh,
and that's
so
what we
right.
need to do. We need to take our country back. We need to take our country back.
Mags, you're so right. We got to start putting these people in jail. And I don't mean the low-hanging fruit. I mean, I want them in jail, too, those that commit the actual fraud. But the politicians who are enabling them, there's no question, and are enriching themselves. This would stop. You're completely right. And look, speaking of, Somalis, Ilhan Omar, within 2 years, is now worth over $30 million. $30 million. It's disgusting. It's highway robbery. She's a crook and a thief. And by the way, an open agent of Somalia and the Somali government. And she's admitted it in speeches in Somali on American soil. So, I don't know what else to say. I mean, when the person admits it themselves, what are we arguing about? So, unless they start putting these politicians in jail, it's just going to continue. And you're right. We're looking at trillions over the years, trillions of dollars that they've stolen and fraud. I think in Maine, you're looking at billions and billions and billions of dollars. So we now know Minnesota 100%. We know Maine 100% is doing this. We know New York. We know Illinois. And we know California. Now, I'm telling you it's happening in Massachusetts. That's why they don't want the audit. And Rhode Island. Oh, my God. Rhode Island's maybe even more corrupt than we are. So how far does this go? Mags, thank you so much for that call. Outstanding call. Jim in Wilmington. Thanks for holding, Jim, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Jim?
Well, not too good saying all this fraud. But anyway, in 1984, I was working for the corrections. I had 4 years in at that point. I changed jobs as far as inside the department. I took hold of a woman's purse because she was acting suspicious, fumbling with IDs. She had a New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts welfare card. And that's not the that was my first experience because I was a different job I did. But that happened many times. Maybe not 5 states, but, don't IDs, picture IDs and fingerprints. 45% of the recipients of welfare in New York City never came back. So, Jeff, I really believe almost 50% of all these programs is fraud.
Well, that's what it looks like. And I think, Jim, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think you may even be lowballing it. I think it could even be higher now because of all the illegals they've brought in. They're looting. They're plundering and looting. That's what they're doing. And look, here, just to give you an example. Gateway Services Company, Gateway Community Services is really a shell company. That's what it is. It's a shell company. It doesn't do anything. And it's a front for them to apply for Medicaid money, which they're not entitled to because they're committing a fraud. And the politicians know they're not putting any oversight. They're not monitoring the money. They're not watching where it's going. Is it being properly used? So it's basically a license to steal. All you got to do is come up with phony receipts. That's it. So they teach them how to do it. Get a phony address. Even to be smarter, rent an actual physical building, even though there's nothing in it. So they have an address. They have a tax ID number. They have receipts. They make sure that they have their accountants file with the IRS as a nonprofit and let the money flow. Let the money flow. And as Keith Ellison in Minnesota said to these Somali fraudsters, you have no fear of ever being investigated. I will cover for you, but you got to keep giving money to my campaign. So you scratch me, I scratch you. You do me a favor, I do you a favor. And I think it's happening all over the country, at least in blue states, guaranteed. Guaranteed. Okay, it's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. I got to tell you, this is a tough one. I mean, I know the results so far, it's basically 75% one way, 25% the other, but I rarely disagree with the audience. On this one, I'm not so sure. So anyway, Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Which state is more corrupt? A, Maine, B, Minnesota. Now, so far, it's basically 75% of you are saying Minnesota, 25% of you are saying Maine. Now, I understand, obviously, Minnesota's been in the news a lot more. Clearly, it's a much bigger state than Maine. The Somali fraud community or the Somali fraudsters. There's a lot of money that's been stolen from Maine. Okay, from Minnesota. I mean, we're looking at $9 billion minimum $9 billion. But if you go per capita, not total, there's no way you can steal that much in Maine, with their population, which is maybe like 1/5 or 1/6 that of Minnesota. But per capita, you look at what they're uncovering now in Maine. It's highway robbery. I mean, it's obscene. It's, rent a building and there's 10, 12, 13 home health care companies, all of them getting millions and millions of dollars and no bid contracts, the taxpayer money, and they don't do a thing, like nothing, absolutely nothing. And it just keeps going and going and going. By the way, they're finding now in Maine, they've never seen so many daycare centers in a state ever. but there's no kids anywhere. So it's how do I say? I don't think in total dollar numbers, you're probably right. Minnesota is more corrupt. But if you're looking at it per capita, per person in the population, it's, let's put it this way. Maine is, and did you ever think of Maine as a corrupt state? Look, really, honestly, right? When you think about corrupt states, you think, I don't know, Louisiana, right? New Orleans is infamous. Arkansas, at least under the Clintons. Obviously, New York City, New York, Chicago, right? As I like to say, Chicago. Chicago is notorious. Illinois is notorious. California, notorious. You don't think of Minnesota, but certainly Maine. I mean, if I said to you, corruption, what state comes to your mind? Now, yes, Minnesota. But, say 5 years ago, would Minnesota even be in your top 10? It's like Vermont. Okay? If I said to you, corruption, Vermont, you'd be like, what? Vermont? No. No. I mean, they may have crazy ex-hippies. Yes. Crazy moonbats. It's Bernie's people. But, thievery, stealing, corruption, fraud, embezzlement. No. Come on. That's Philadelphia. That's Baltimore. That's Chicago. That's LA. That's Boston. That's Massachusetts. Hackorama. Maine it's unbelievable what's happening in Maine. So anyway, okay. Which state is more corrupt? I digress. A, Maine. B, Minnesota. I want to hear from you. This is a toughie. This is not easy, believe me. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN is in national ER. You can also vote via X, and again last night, very active on X. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN is in national ER. Angelo in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Angelo, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. This is going way out of control, but let's not lose sight of everything. I'm going to call this new outreach for the American Patriots. We're going to have to do something on our own. We can't get physical. We can't get violent, but we could become the Patriot watchdogs of America. What I mean by that is all good faith, patriotic citizens of the United States of America have to help law enforcement. Now, what's happening is these rogue Democratic states are being led by the Obama regime. His plan has definitely come into effect, and it's operating just the way they had planned. So all we can do, because our hands are really tied, we can't tie up the money, this, that, and the other thing, but we can do in good faith of patriotic and to help America is keep your eyes wide open, report to ICE all the hiding places, don't get physical, don't even go out with signs, just do all your watchdog. The internal people that are patriots could recognize where all the money's being stolen and different things and just keep tipping it off. We outnumber them all in all, and if we all stick together, the red states, we can join together and get America back on track, which we are. Trump's doing it with his administration, but they are so entrenched, they need the American public to step up, not get physical, because that's what they want. They're putting people in harm's way with ICE because they are indoctrinated and they are being bought and sold by this regime that's trying to take over America with our enemies, and that's what's going on here. And Mags, you hit it all the time. You're right on spot, but I see it a little deeper than that. We have to help make those phones ring and get in their faces without them even knowing it, and just keep calling and call ICE, report them. We are the patriotic watchdogs of America, and we have to help our country. What do you think?
Angelo, I think it's an excellent point, and the only thing I can do is add to it. And I think it's time now, again, no violence. I never condone violence, you know that. But I think it's time for us now to start shaming anti-ICE agitators. And we have to start shaming the sanctuary city mayors and governors and members of Congress. In other words, we have to stop being on defense and we have to start going on offense. Janet Mills needs to be shamed. She's breaking the law. This is, look, I refer Minnesota now as Confederate Minnesota. I want to shame them because that's what they are. They're behaving like the Confederate States. Maine is now Confederate Maine. Janet Mills does not have the right to negate and annul and nullify federal immigration law, federal law enforcement, federal authority, federal sovereignty. She doesn't. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just very, very quickly. Yes, the fraud is despicable. It is disgusting. It's illegal. It's criminal. It's also going to bankrupt us. Okay, it's going to, as a country, I'm telling you, no country can sustain this level of fraud. Never mind how it's cheating our own citizens out of much needed social welfare programs and social services. We talk always about how come our poor homeless veterans are sleeping on the streets. Well, now you know why. You have the elderly now. For example, here in Massachusetts, we're bracing for maybe a foot, 2 feet of snow over the weekend. And now you've got elderly people saying they can't pay their electric bills because prices have gone up so high. The costs have gone up so high. People on fixed income, Social Security, they're petrified. If they lose power, they're going to freeze to death. We have Americans that are going hungry. And we're spending all this money on school lunch programs, and it's not going to hungry children. It's going into the pockets of these crooked Somalis. Okay, I could go on and on and on. So what I'm saying is, as a society, we're paying more and more and more of a price for this. And we have to work harder and harder to pay for these programs and pay more in taxes, and we're finding out it's being stolen from us. But that's just one side of the ledger. The other side is maybe just as destructive. And that's what I talked about when I said it's the great replacement. It's clear. They want to replace especially white Americans. That's their goal. They've openly said it. Notice, anti-white racism is prominent and fashionable everywhere. Everywhere. It's fashionable in schools, in universities, in colleges, in the media. The way Democrats talk, you would think being a white person is the greatest, the worst thing that ever happened. And they're using immigration as a weapon to replace white voters, white citizens, white workers, because ultimately they believe that if they can bring in a third world population like these Somalis, that they can utterly control them. And why? Because they don't speak very good English. Many of them have low education, low skills. They come from a third world culture, and they're dependent completely upon Democrat handouts, or in this case, fraud schemes. Now, to show you how bad it's getting, and by the way, they're not assimilating. A, they don't want to assimilate, and B, they're speaking their own language. They don't want to learn English. And this is going to balkanize us even more and divide us and fracture us as a country even more. Remember, if you don't have a unifying language, you don't have a unifying culture. If you don't have a unifying culture, you don't have a unified country. I mean, this is just common sense. Now, this is how bad it's getting, okay? This is Maine. Maine. And not even the Somali areas of Minneapolis, which are even worse. But this is Maine. Maine. So recently, they had city council elections in Lewiston. Okay, city council. And people get to speak out and say who they're going to vote for or who they think people should vote for at these for these city council seats. Now, it has now come to this, that at the recent election, this was just a few days ago, for a vacant Lewiston City Council seat, the room was flooded with illegal alien Somali refugees, among others. Okay, illegal alien Somalians who don't know a word of English. And they don't even know who they're supposed to support. They just bring them in. The Democrats just bring them in, and they give them an interpreter. And so at the recent event, a Somali speaker is quietly told in their ear who they should support. They're like, well, who? In Somali. Who should I support? Who? And they say, no, support the Democrat. Well, who's a Democrat? And they give the person the name. And then the Somali who's supposed to make the vote says, quote, I don't know what to say. This is in Somali. I don't know what to say, to the interpreter. I don't know what to say. Tell me what to say. What is the name of the man to vote for? I don't really remember. Please help me. And this was happening, I'm not talking once or twice. This was rampant throughout the entire election. Okay, that vote. And at that city council vote, where people get up to speak, residents who don't speak English, for example, like these Somalis, but there's others. They come from different parts of Africa, different parts of Asia. There were even some Ukrainians they brought in, couldn't speak a word of English. They get 6 minutes for their testimony. They get to speak for 6 minutes. English-speaking voters, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. So, if you can't speak English, and you're most likely an illegal, or if you're legal, you probably committed immigration fraud. You come in, you don't know who to vote for, you don't even know what you're saying. You have an interpreter on behalf of the Democratic Party telling you what to say and who to vote for. And they give you 6 minutes, 2 times that of an English speaker. In other words, an American citizen. Now, you tell me, is that fair? Is that your America? That's not my America. That's the Tower of Babel. That's a third world country. That's what we're staring at right now. So you have to listen to somebody in a language, whatever the language is, and like, what? And hold on, with the translator, and then they get to speak twice as long as I do in my own country, in my own city council election, in my city. There's your subjugation right there. You're a second, third-class citizen right there. They're giving them twice as much time as you. You don't even have to speak your own language. And they're all on welfare. They're all, if they're not stealing by setting up these fake daycare centers and home care companies and etc., okay? If it's, they're not just stealing by creating these shell companies and robbing us to the tune of millions, they're on welfare. You pay for their housing, you pay for their food, their health care, their school, their education, their food stamps, everything. And they don't know English, and they get twice as much time. And by the way, their candidate won. Of course their candidate won. And now you know why Maine is becoming a blue state. Because if you import the third world, you become the third world. So that's why you're asking, well, Jeff, why this ferocious, rabid opposition, fanatical opposition to ICE. This is why. It threatens their very power. It threatens their grand project, the Great Replacement. They gotta go. They gotta go. Every single Somali illegal alien must go. Every illegal alien must go. Committed a violent crime, didn't commit a violent crime. They've all got to go. If they're on welfare, they've got to go. If they're running one of these frauds and scams, they've got to go. If their allegiance is to a foreign country, they've got to go. And how much longer are we, the American people, going to take this? Seriously, how much longer before we say enough is enough? Okay, just to put an exclamation point to what I was saying, Mike loves it when he cuts me off, and so he cut me off in mid-sentence. Pam Bondi, as I was going to say, needs to indict Janet Mills. She has to. There's no question now. She's leading an insurrection in Maine, but I think more than that, beyond that, we're looking now at billions of dollars in fraud. And for a small state with a sparsely populated sparse population, as sparsely populated as Maine, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And so, look, we've got to start going on offense. It's not enough to just keep uncovering this. It's great to uncover, but there's got to be arrests. There's got to be serious consequences, or else this is not going to stop. You have to go for the big fish, not just the small fish. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree? Wait, go ahead, my friend.
Track here. Robodope or something.
All right, go ahead. Listening? Go ahead, Bob.
Well, he's smarter than all of us. He's playing us some kind of rope-a-dope. He's got us on the ropes, and he'll come back. He's a good man.
You're talking about Trump?
Yes.
Oh, he's a very good man. The question is, it's his attorney general. That's the question. Oh, he's a great man. The attorney general, look, I'm happy. She made some arrests yesterday. I'm going to get to this a little bit later in the show. Those people that stormed, at least the organizers that stormed that church in St. Paul, 3 of them have been arrested. 4 others, there are now charges pending, and it looks like they're going to be arrested as well. Don Lemon, he had a judge bail him out temporarily. So anyway, I'm going to get to all of that. But, to me, it's not Donald Trump I'm worried about. He's great. It's his DOJ, his Justice Department. And they got to start getting a lot more aggressive. Andy in Milford. Thanks for holding, Andy, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Andy, what's on your mind, my friend?
Okay, to take it from the top, Jeff. In one of the things that's been going on in Minneapolis is these anti-ICE protesters have been using, and if this has been reported on, has been using kids as human shields in these protests. And I think we need to briefly visit this because in every state in the union, there are laws on the books, strong laws on the books against child endangerment. And I've not heard of one arrest anywhere in Minneapolis or anywhere in Minnesota for child endangerment concerning any of these activists doing this. And child endangerment in any capacity is a serious crime. And And the thing is, just the way the authority structure is set up, state police are under the authority of the governor of the state. Local police are under the authority of whether it's the mayor of the city or closer to home here, they would be under the authority of the select board of any given town. That's the authority structure. And Janet Mills up in Maine is bragging about how they're going to be following the Minnesota model. So let's just be clear what the Minnesota model is. The model is that, in this case, the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota order local and state police to stand down. Okay, so state and local police's hands are tied because they're prevented by that authority structure from enforcing the law. So there's two things President Trump needs to do right now. And I mean, as soon as he's back here on the ground from Davos, and by the way, what he's accomplished there is going to be huge for our country's future. But as soon as he touches down from being back from Davos, he's got to be on this 24/7. First thing he's got to do is he's got to shut off all federal funds to every blue state, to every blue city, every sanctuary state and sanctuary city. And he's got to be firm about it. Anybody who's harboring illegals, no more federal funds of any kind. The federal funds stop. That's number one. Number two, he needs to invoke the Insurrection Act. Needs to start with Minnesota. Needs to surge the military into Minnesota to restore order. And in particular in Minneapolis, I think Minneapolis, Jeff, has gotten so bad that Minneapolis, I think, is going to have to be put under martial law for a time. Clean up what's happened there.
Well, Andy, you're making excellent, as usual, you always make excellent points. Look, I can just say this. President Trump now has given the ultimatum. We'll see. He's given them a deadline February 1st. You don't cooperate with ICE. You continue to obstruct and impede law enforcement. He's put over, how many now? Dozens and dozens of sanctuary cities and jurisdictions, including Boston. Okay, but obviously Minneapolis. I don't know about Maine, but I do know Minneapolis and others, that if you continue to be a sanctuary city, you continue to obstruct ICE, you're going to lose all federal funds, period. So they're basically a week away from losing all federal funding. As for invoking the Insurrection Act, I'm with you, Andy. I've been calling for this for a long time. However, J.D. Vance, I don't know if you saw him yesterday in Minneapolis. By the way, he was phenomenal. I got to say this. He does it his own way. His style is different than Trump's. And maybe if you really love Trump's style, maybe you're not going to like JD, but his policies are completely identical to Trump. Style's a bit different, but he was so polished and he's so intelligent and he's so articulate. The way he dismantled the media. I mean, intellectually, he eviscerated them. But he does it in that nice, folksy Midwest way. You know, he's got a smile. He's optimistic. He's not really, how do I say this? He's not, Trump has got sharp elbows, right? When, Trump will lower the boom and he'll get very confrontational. No, JD will always say something like, well, I appreciate the question or I appreciate your concern. But you got to look at it from law enforcement's point of view. And then boom, he starts destroying them. He demolished them. Every narrative, every false claim, every half-truth, it was an exercise in, how to defeat the media 101. It was a thing of beauty. Okay, it was a thing of beauty. I looked at him and I said, my God, that's the heir apparent. This guy, this guy, he's the guy to replace Trump after Trump is gone. Succeed Trump when, he's finished his term. But anyway, no, JD made it clear that the president believes, he said, look, I don't want to speak for him, but he goes, before I spoke to you, I spoke to him. And this is what he told me to tell you, that Trump does not want to invoke the Insurrection Act. He feels it would be unnecessary, that it would be, this is what JD said, needlessly provocative, that already Minneapolis is a tinderbox. They want to calm the temperature. They want to de-escalate. And so they have enough, they believe, DHS officials, ICE agents, federal officials already on the ground in Minneapolis to protect ICE as they go into these communities to make the arrests. So it looks like Trump has, at least for now, put the brakes on the Insurrection Act. Now, I think it's a mistake, to be honest with you, Andy, but that's the decision the president has made. Now, they are starting to make arrests. They arrested 3 of the key organizers behind those that stormed that church in St. Paul, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So we're starting to see something now from Pam Bondi. At least something is happening. My fear is it's not enough, Andy. And I can just tell by Janet Mills's reaction, there's no fear. The sanctuary city mayor of Portland, there's no fear. Lewiston, there's no fear. So they're replicating the exact same resistance techniques, the exact same insurrectionist behavior that you're seeing in Minnesota. So we'll see how things play out. We do have a snowstorm coming. It's going to be very cold. That should keep the protesters off the streets for at least a few days. But I fear, Andy, this is going to go on for months. And I agree with you. Minneapolis is descending into chaos and anarchy in front of our eyes. It's an ungovernable city. The police aren't arresting anyone for anything. Vigilantes are going around destroying cars, businesses, attacking people for no reason. Anybody who's suspected of being an ICE agent or a conservative, they're driving people out of restaurants, out of establishments. People now are afraid to leave their homes. People aren't going to work. It's going from bad to worse. So I think eventually it's going to lead to martial law. And again, I'd rather you act now than act later. Because when you act later, it A, may be too late, and B, there's already a lot of damage. But as things stand, it's going to be the status quo in Minneapolis. That's what JD said yesterday. So, Andy, I agree with you. But sadly, I think things are going to have to get even worse before Trump invokes the Insurrection Act. At least that's what I got from J.D. Vance's press conference yesterday. Andy, as always, thank you so much for that call. Okay, 8 o'clock. You know what that means? Friday, caller of the week, Kuhner's Call Log.
It's time for Kuhner's Call Log, where we showcase our favorite caller from the week.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Thanks for holding, Mary.
I just want to first reassure those that I think are worried about Trump putting America first and not focusing on the United States. There's just no future without what he's doing for our country. By creating the safety and protection, he's laying the groundwork and the foundation for our security for a long period of time. There's no future. People saying, 20 years from now, he's laying plans and he's making plans now for our protection. He may not always come across pleasantly, but I don't care. He has my 100% support. Always steps ahead to secure the future of our country. I trust the man 1,000%. And I think the Europeans need to put the temper tantrum and get on board and support us as we've always supported them. since, the end of the war and before that. I am happy. I think that without the kind of gusto and bravado that he is, and sometimes, could be a little blistering for those who are offended easily. And it takes someone of his stature and character and personality to get this done. This couldn't be done by someone else who is weak and who capitulates to other countries and to people in this country that are afraid of offending people. He's not afraid of that. He puts our country first. I just think we're blessed to have him.
And next week, it could be you on Kuhner's Call Log.
Please, don't be a stranger. Call again. Again, callers, you always bring it. Again, outstanding week. And best audience in the business. And speaking of great callers, let's go right back to our great callers. 617-266-6868. Okay, it's all on the table. Let me ask you. Is Maine now becoming the new Minnesota? Are we now watching an insurrection take place in Maine? The governor now says she's refusing to cooperate with ICE. She's ordered all local and state law enforcement to not cooperate with ICE. She's also asking citizens of Maine, residents, to monitor ICE, to warn illegals if ICE is in their neighborhood. And she's urging all illegals to evade ICE if possible. To me, if that's not an insurrection, I don't know what is. And what should the president and his Department of Justice do? Andy says it's time to invoke the Insurrection Act. I agree. Trump won't do it for now. What needs to be done? What should be done? 617-266-6868. Heather in Wareham. Thanks for holding, Heather, and welcome.
Hi, Jeffrey. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I have a comment and then a question. First of all, my grandparents, especially my grandmother, would be rolling in her grave right now because my grandparents had a potato farm way up in northern Maine, near Canada. So my mother grew up in Maine, way up there, and they were very. They were old school, and they were like prejudiced. Yeah, I would say they were prejudiced. So all this going on in Maine, my grandmother would be beside herself. So that's my comment. But my question is, the question I have for you is, this all makes sense, and I know that's what's going on is the great takeover. And you made a comment earlier in the show about the people in office think that there's too many white Democrats. Something like I can't exactly quote, but you said something along those lines. What I don't understand is, and I know this intellectually, but it just doesn't make sense to me that a lot of these people in office are white themselves. And they have white children, and they have, grandchildren and nieces and nephews. And so, what I'm getting at is they obviously only think of now. They don't think of the future. They only care about themselves, right? Am I making sense?
No, you're making perfect sense. Look, it's called the Great Replacement, and it's a project. It's a globalist project. It's an open project. And it's adhered to by Macron, by Keir Starmer, by almost every European Union leader, with a few exceptions. It's the driving agenda of the Democratic Party, of the left in this country. You see it in colleges and universities. The way it's expressed in colleges and universities is through critical race theory, which is essentially anti-white hatred, anti-white racism. Whites are to blame for everything. Whites are responsible for slavery, for genocide, for homophobia, for Islamophobia. It just goes on and on. And that's why if you go to any schools, like even in my school, my child's school, Ashton just 2 days ago complained to me that he goes, all he hears from his teacher, who's white, is how bad white people are. And that white people should apologize. Apologize for every sin under the face of on the earth. Every sin under, on God's green earth. And Ashton was like, what did we do? He said his friends are very angry. He's angry. They feel constantly picked on because of the color of their skin. They're always being told that they're racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, transphobic, Islamophobic. He goes, it just doesn't end. So you can see in the literature, in the textbooks, in the curriculum, in the way people talk, white privilege. Well, what do you mean? What's the privilege? Well, you're just born white. So there's anti-white racism. It's by far the number one racism in our country. We are just as racist a country as we've ever been, except now it's directed against whites. And so you're saying, well, okay, but if you have this great replacement theory, because the theory is this: if you want to get rid of capitalism, if you want to get rid of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, cultural, historical America, okay, the America of our founding fathers. Well, who are the people that founded our country? They were whites. That's what they, who signed the Declaration of Independence? White men. Who created the Constitution? White men. This is how they reason. So if you want to destroy America, you have to destroy white America. Okay, this is the Marxist theory. And so you have to replace white America. That's why they push birth control, not on minorities, on white women. That's why they, for example, push white women to go into the workforce, and my wife works. I don't, please, I'm not against women working. But my point is they say, have a career so you don't have to have children. Because children is a burden. So they don't want whites to have children. They want them to abort their children. If you're going to have a child, have only one. That's it. Don't have any more. And of course, replace them through massive uncontrolled immigration. So the question is, well, Janet Mills is white. Tim Walz is white. You could go on and on. Like what about their kids and grandkids? They're self-hating whites. It's like these Jews who support Hamas. And there are Jews who support Hamas. You realize Hamas wants to wipe out every Jew off the face of the earth. They're self-hating Jews. I saw it in my own family, Croatian descent. Communists. They were self-hating Croatians. Literally, they hated themselves. They wanted to wipe out every vestige of Croatianism. Liberal Americans are self-hating Americans. They hate America and everything he stands for. Let me ask all of you, is Maine now becoming as corrupt as Minnesota? And now Maine's governor, as well as the mayors of Portland and Lewiston, now vow to obstruct ICE as they try to capture, detain, and arrest 1,400 violent, criminal, illegal aliens. They have detainers, they have arrest warrants, and yet so far they've only managed to capture 50 because of resistance from the mayor, from the governor, and their orders that local law enforcement do nothing to help ICE. In fact, they're telling residents, resist ICE. 617-266-6868. Okay, who do you want me to go to next, Mike? Jeff in Chelsea. Thanks for holding, Jeff, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Now, Jeff, living in Chelsea, which is a ghetto, what I would do, I would sell, if I could.
Jeff, are you on speaker?
No, I'm off speaker.
You're off speaker. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, what I would do is if I had a house, I'd sell my house, and I would go to a red state right away. I would keep my head down. I'd keep my mouth shut, because Chelsea's enemy territory, along with Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, any of the welfare magnates. If you're a white person, mouth shut, head down, sell the house, take a little bit of a loss, go to Florida or go to a red state as soon as possible, and you strengthen that state because you can't do anything when you live in enemy territory. It's just that simple. Think of yourself as an anti-communist in Romania when it was under Stalin. It's just that simple.
Well, that's what it's starting to feel like, Jeff. It's like we're becoming two Americas. And I have to tell you, I was in Florida for the Christmas break. We spent a few days in Tampa Bay and then in Clearwater. It's a different world. Living in a red state is just a different world than living in a blue state. People are much freer. They're much more prosperous. Frankly, they're much happier. There's much less crime, much more respect for police and law enforcement. I mean, you could have much more patriotism. I could just go on and on. Much more pride in being an American. Being an American means something. In many, at least in Tampa and Clearwater, what I saw. Here, you really feel like you're in enemy territory. You do. You feel like you're somehow behind the Berlin Wall. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And what scares me about Maine, Jeff, is I've never thought of Maine historically as a radical state, as an insurgent state, as now essentially a Confederate state. A state, what I mean by Confederate is an open rebellion against federal authority and federal law enforcement. But this is what we're getting now under Maine. And by the way, the governor and the mayors are saying they want even more illegals to come. They're recruiting even more Somalis to come. So they're determined to keep pushing more and more to the left. And that's why I fear that things in Maine on its present course right now, if you can believe it, is going to become as blue, as leftist, as extreme and radical as Massachusetts or California. They just don't quite have the demographics yet. But give them another 5 or 10 years, and you'll never see a Republican win in Maine. Ever. So, and that's the goal. And then swamp it with illegals, change the very cultural demographic composition of the state, and put them all on welfare and allow them to have all these scams where they're just defrauding people of billions of dollars. And you got one party rule for the next 50 years. So, Jeff, that's what we're facing unless ICE can come in there and start mass deportations. And that's why I've said this from the beginning. Trump's second term, and I believe ultimately his legacy, will stand or fall on the success of his mass deportations and how effective he was in repelling Biden's invasion. Because this was clearly an invasion. And they're behaving like invaders. Invaders steal, loot, plunder, pillage, and that's what these illegal aliens are doing. They're stealing our money to the tune that's almost unimaginable. And they're lying to our faces as they do it. Jeff, thank you very much for that call. Here, I just want to play the cut again. We have the cut, so might as well just play it. For those of you that are just tuning in, massive fraud now, welfare fraud, being discovered in Maine, almost identical. In fact, not almost, identical to what happened in Minnesota. For example, the illegal alien Somali community, and there's a very big one in Portland and especially in Lewiston, have been caught setting up clusters of home health companies, same thing in Minneapolis, where they give a single address for 10, 12, 13 companies. They pay rent, that's it, and they provide no services. Zero, zilch. And yet they're charging Maine Care, which is the state's Medicaid program, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And so a reporter walked up to one of these addresses a building that apparently had 10 of these home health care companies registered there. Their addresses were supposedly there. There's nobody there. There's not even no person there. There's no desk. There's no lamp. There's no fax machine. It's empty, 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 empty. And then the reporter manages to speak to the landlord. and he's collecting whatever it is, $500-600 a month rent from these companies. And he says, yeah. So here's the landlord. His name is Ron Nevins. This is in Portland, Maine. This is his building. He said as much as 12 or 13 of these home health care companies have been renting out that building. Now it's 10. That's the address that these 10 different companies use. Again, the offices empty, empty, empty. These home health care companies do nothing, no services whatsoever, but they're billing and billing and billing. And they just keep cutting those checks. Okay, Governor Janet Mills and others, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, that's our taxpayer money. So this should be going to help our elderly who need help with, cleaning, washing, taking care of themselves, having nursing care at home. Instead, all of that is being stolen right underneath our nose by, in some cases, the exact same illegal alien Somalis that are running the same scam in Minnesota. By the way, I think they're running it in multiple states. I don't think it's just Minnesota, Maine. I want to know what they're doing in Rhode Island. I want to know what they're doing here in Massachusetts. I want to know what they're doing in Illinois. I guarantee you, it's not just Minnesota, Maine. I guarantee it. But anyway, so here's the landlord saying, they pay their rent and that's about it. Roll cut 15. Mike.
Do you think these businesses are actually legit businesses?
Some, yes, but some I highly question. Nobody's ever here, and if it was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but when there's 10, I've had as many as 12 or 13 probably before. The 5-star, I took the sign out the door because I'm trying to rent the office.
Either you laugh or you cry. I don't know what to tell you. So, yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad. And look, they have an illegal voting operation, the Democrats have in Maine, and they do that with Somalis as well, others, illegal aliens. But the Somalis, it's down to an absolute science. And that's why now Portland is a Democrat stronghold. Lewiston, forget about it. They're bringing in people at city council elections who cannot speak a word of English, who are literally being told by a translator, an interpreter, who to vote for. And literally, they're being told in their ear, this is who you vote for. Okay. The check's in the mail. Okay. 617-266-6868. Matt in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Matt, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call. With all this fraud going on, the leaders of Maine and Minneapolis, they're really aiding and abetting all of this. And then they're enabling all the protesters as well. Instead of, to get control of all this, I think it's time Pam Bondi starts making arrests. And I know Trump, with Greenland, for example, he likes to create a little bit of chaos. And then he comes in and he has a great plan of attack on how to negotiate. I think right now he's just, allowing that chaos to continue a little bit. And hopefully they come down with a hammer and make some arrests in Minneapolis, because I'm pretty sure Janet Mills doesn't want to get arrested and embarrassed, once she sees what happens in Minneapolis, if they do anything there.
Well, I think you nailed it, Matt. And this is the problem. Yes, they did make arrests. I promise I'm going to talk about that in the next segment, and it's good. I'm not complaining. I'm happy. You shouldn't be allowed to storm a church, and shut down a service. It's ridiculous. But they see, she sees, Waltz is getting away with it. And Mayor Fry is getting away with it. Jacob Fry is getting away with it. And Ilhan Omar is getting away with it. In fact, now her wealth keeps growing. It started, last week it was 30 million. Now they're saying it's at 32 million. Now the latest estimates are it's 34 million. So, she's robbing people left, right, and center, and no one's touching her. Keith Ellison's, no one's touching him. So if you're a Democrat, you come to one conclusion. we can break the law with impunity. And just as long as we use shell companies and these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations, and make sure we make, the Somalis are running them or other third world illegals are running them. And if anyone tries to investigate or audit them or conduct oversight, just say racist, racist, racist. And everybody backs off. And I think the key, Matt, is that the media is their Praetorian Guard. Outside of one or two outlets in Maine, and I mean literally one or two outlets, the entire Maine media, they know about this. It's an open secret in Maine. And it's rampant corruption, rampant fraud, rampant theft. Nobody wants to cover it. It's like here in Massachusetts. I've always said this. If I was the editor of a newspaper, and they would never allow that in this state, but if I was, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. All the corruption, as they call it, Bacon Hill, up on Beacon Hill, it would be every day, front page, scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal. Because when you have one party rule, there's no accountability whatsoever. None. It's like living in an Eastern European dictatorship. It's obscene how they steal. Well, that's what's happening here. It's obscene. So they're protected by the media. CNN won't touch it. MS Now won't touch it. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe. I could run on and on. Why? Because all of these will destroy Democrats. Every Democrat governor, every Democrat mayor is either going to go to jail or have their careers utterly destroyed, ruined. So that's why they're just going to keep covering it up. The problem is we're running out of money. They're stealing so much of our money, Matt. We're going to go down. It's unsustainable. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said they're stealing now about 10% of the federal budget. That's what we know of. You're looking at $700 billion to $1 trillion a year in fraud and theft. That's how much they're stealing. I'm telling you, in Russia, maybe they steal 40, 50 million a year. Ukraine, okay. They're a little more because all of our money is going there, our money, EU money. But even there, you're looking at maybe 100 billion that they steal, which is obscene, don't get me wrong. But we're at 700 billion, $1 trillion territory. We're making the oligarchs, I'm telling you, we're making the oligarchs in Russia and Ukraine look like Mother Teresa, like choir boys. And the problem is, it's not just the Somalis. It's in illegal alien community after illegal alien community, and the Chinese are big on it. By the way, they're running a cannabis operation up there in Maine. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. With the full cooperation and collaboration of Janet Mills. Foreign governments are involved in this welfare fraud. Foreign governments. They're looking at this and saying, forget foreign aid. That's peanuts. Look how much we can steal from the welfare fraud and the taxpayer programs. So, Matt, look, it's not a question anymore of whether Trump wants to do it, doesn't want to do it. He has to do it. The only question is Pam Bondi up to the job? And, Matt, I hate to say this, I like the arrests in Minneapolis for those that stormed the church. But as long as Jacob Fry is walking, and Tim Walz is walking, and now Janet Mills is walking, they're just going to keep doing it. And that's ultimately the problem. In Eastern Europe, they put corrupt politicians in jail. Okay, just very, very quickly, the lines are blazing. They're jammed. I'm going to go right back to the phone lines. But first, here was J.D. Vance, and he was on fire yesterday. I'm telling you, absolutely on fire. It was a Q&A with the media. It was a press conference, and he destroyed them. He absolutely destroyed them. Listen now to him, because the media is going on about how, oh, ICE is authoritarian, ICE is abusing due process, ICE is out of control, ICE is behaving like the Gestapo, blah, 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 blah. Basically almost saying, well, we side with the protesters, the agitators, the insurrectionists. And JD said, stop it. Knock it off. Listen now to JD. Roll cut 8B, Mike.
I think it's insane to let tens of millions of people flood across your country, many of them with violent criminal records, and then to say you're not allowed to do anything to get those people out of your country. That's crazy to me. Fine. If you disagree, if you think that we ought to let sex offenders be in your community, even if they're illegal aliens, fine. Make that argument. But make that argument at the ballot box. Write an op-ed in a newspaper. Argue about it on social media. Don't go to the streets and start assaulting federal law enforcement officers because you disagree with the policies of our administration. It's cowardly and it's got to stop.
He's completely right. He's completely right. Absolutely right. And then he went on to say, and by the way, he apologized. There were some kids in the room. You know, JD's funny. And he's like, I'm sorry. My mother cussed. I shouldn't cuss. My wife is on my case about it. We're working on it. I'm so sorry. But then, you know, he went on to talk about what happened at that church service last Sunday in St. Paul, where anti-ICE agitators stormed the church, terrorized the worshipers, shut down the worship service, and essentially chased all the parishioners out. And JD said, not in my America. Roll cut 8D, Mike.
You don't have to agree with my immigration policies, but if you want to protest by going to an innocent church service on a Sunday, you see these images. They're scaring little kids who are there to worship God on a Sunday morning. Those people are going to be sent to prison so long as we have the power to do so. We're going to do everything that we can to enforce the law, whether you're protesting at a church, which is a violation of federal law, or you're assaulting a law enforcement officer, which again is a violation of federal law. There are going to be consequences. There already have been consequences, and there are going to be a lot more to come. So my message is, if you're thinking about assaulting a law enforcement, don't, because we're going to lock you up if you do.
Amen, brother. Amen. You had me at hello. Okay, now, speaking of locking them up, so here is exactly what happened yesterday. Pam Bondi, thank you, Jesus, finally made some arrests. And so 3 of the ringleaders of the storming of that church, 2 of them are black women. One is a psycho. He's a white male. So, and the first one is Nikema Levy Armstrong. She is a Black Lives Matter activist. She was arrested. By the way, she is not just a BLM activist, she's a grifter. She runs a nonprofit where she makes $1 million. $1 million running this nonprofit where almost no grants are given to the community. Everything goes into her pocket. Okay? So like many of these BLM activists, she's a thief. She's a con artist and a grifter. But she was arrested. She was one of the key ringleaders. And one of the other key organizers was Chantil Louisa Allen. And then the third one, and this guy's a real psycho. He's a hardcore Marxist psychopath. His name is William Kelly, no relation to our William Kelly at Kelly Financial Services. He's the one who did a video basically begging Pam Bondi to arrest him after he stormed the church. Okay, this guy's got a real screw loose. So, the 3 of them have been arrested. They've been arrested for violating the FACE Act, and they're also now going to face extra charges under the Ku Klux Klan Act, because you're not allowed to go into a church and violate people's civil liberties and civil rights. So they're now staring potentially at several years in prison. There are still 4 other of the organizers, and remember, this was all on videotape and live streamed by former CNN host Don Lemon. So they're in the process of arresting the other 4. However, Pam Bondi, to her credit, put out an arrest warrant for Don Lemon. And she should have put out an arrest for Don Lemon, because he was not being, as he claims, a quote-unquote journalist. He was an anti-ICE activist masquerading as a journalist. You can see him on tape. He knew, he had premeditated knowledge of what they were going to do. He supported fully what they were doing. He, in fact, was encouraging them to go into the church. Then when they went into the church, he was defending what they were doing, saying, oh, the First Amendment guarantees you the right to storm into a church. No, it doesn't. In fact, the freedom to worship is guaranteed in the First Amendment. But let that go. And he's there debating with the parishioners. He's there debating with the pastor. So he clearly was part of the mob. She puts out an arrest warrant for Don Lemon. She was going to arrest and charge him like these 3. However, a federal magistrate judge, a far-left judge, refused to sign the criminal complaint against Don Lemon. I'm not making this up. Refused. The judge's name is Douglas Micko, M-I-C-K-O, okay? Douglas Micko. And he's a far leftist. He sides with these leftist, anti-ICE, really pro-murderer, pro-rapist, wife-beater activists, saying, no, they have the right to incite a riot in a church. They have the right to traumatize and terrorize worshipers. And so he refused to sign off on the criminal complaint. And here's the kicker. You want to talk about a conflict of interest. The judge, his wife, works in Attorney General Keith Ellison's office, the state attorney general in Minnesota. She's an assistant attorney general in the state AG Keith Ellison's office. And by the way, apparently his wife is a huge anti-ICE agitator and anti-ICE activist. And so this clown is deliberately blocking the Department of Justice to issue an arrest warrant to arrest Don Lemon, who is caught on camera, organizing a riot inside a church. Now, Pam Bondi apparently is livid with this judge. I don't blame her. Livid. And she says she's not going to stop. They're going to find other avenues, whatever they got to do, to go after Don Lemon and put him in handcuffs. So we're going to see how that develops. But this is now the problem. If you start to have judges, you're not going to sign off on arrest warrants? So the resistance is now spreading to the judiciary? And by the way, in a clear conflict of interest, your wife works for the state. Your wife works for the state attorney general, who's on the side of the rioters and the insurrectionists. He should have recused himself, this fraud, this joke of a judge. Enough is enough. These out-of-control, far left-wing radical, they're not even judges, they're activists pretending to be judges. Okay? They're activists in black robes. They need to be impeached and they need to be removed from the bench. They're making a mockery of our judicial system. And just because Don Lemon, that fraud, okay? That useless fraud who got kicked out of CNN because he was so rabid and his ratings were so bad. Just because he's a media personality doesn't give that fraud immunity from the law. Just because you have a lot of friends in the media and in the Democratic Party shouldn't provide you legal immunity from criminal prosecution. He broke the law. He knowingly broke the law. The idiot filmed himself breaking the law. There's an arrest warrant out for him. And the judge won't sign the criminal complaint? Are you kidding me? Of all of them, he's the one I want the most. He's the one I want the most. Because you want my honest opinion? I think he was the real ringleader. I think he was the real mastermind. I'm not saying these people are, naive or innocent. Far from it. But I bet you he egged them on. He urged them. He encouraged them. I'll make you a star. Go storm the church. Everybody will know your name. You'll be everywhere on the internet. Let's do it. And by the way, speaking of anti-white racism, Don Lemon said those were white Christians that were being targeted in that church, so it's okay. It's okay. Because white Christianity is a much lower form of Christianity than other forms of Christianity. In other words, if the churchgoers are predominantly white, you can do whatever you want to them. 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. AJ in Revere. Thanks for holding, AJ, and welcome.
Thank you, Kuhner, man. Thank God for you and Donald Trump. We need a Kuhner bulldozer in every city in this country. But I wanted to say is Andy, who called a little while back, couldn't agree with him more. I think he's 1,000% correct. But, I listened to all the shows on RKO and other, same format things. And the common denominator with all the people that call in is they are sick and tired of there being no arrests and no prosecution. It has to come, and it has to come fast. This is widespread. It's a cancer. It's spreading like crazy. And I'd like to see Donald Trump take it one step further. Not only just cut the money off, but stop everything and make these people come to centers or ICE facilities, show identification before they get any money, any food stamps, anything. And if you can't make it to one of these centers, then you send someone out with 2 ICE agents and you let them prove to you that they are legal and they deserve the money that we are all giving them. This is crazy.
AJ, call me crazy. By the way, you're on fire. I'm telling you, you're on fire. Call me crazy, okay? To me, welfare benefits should only go to American citizens, period. Period. Especially those who deserve them, who need them. We have poor people. They need to be fed. They need to be clothed. They need to be housed. We have elderly people who need a nurse to go visit them in their homes and give them their medications and, help clean them a little bit and whatever, do some basic services. Look, these are poor elderly people. These are our fellow Americans. We have to take care of them. I'm sorry. I can't believe that we're allowing our country to be invaded by tens of millions of illegals who then, on top of everything else, siphon off and leech off of our welfare programs, our social services that are intended for our people, our poor, our vulnerable, our elderly, our disabled. But then on top of that, you create these fraud schemes where you're setting up phony, non-existent daycare centers, home care companies, providing apparently school lunches, and you're ripping off taxpayers, and you're taking food out of the mouths of hungry children. They're not getting any school lunches at all. They're not getting, elderly people or disabled people are not getting any home health care at all. Children aren't giving any, there's no daycare. No one's taking care of these kids. And then to add insult to injury, you can't even make the effort, I don't know, rent a building and throw a couple kids in there, for God's sake. Whatever. If you're going to run a scam, don't steal 100%. I don't know, steal 80%. Okay, well, at least there's 3 kids in there. Even if they're your kids. Okay, put them there. Okay. But no, AJ, I swear to you, they don't even do that. And then they put them up, whatever it may be, in, either in their apartments or their homes or empty buildings, or in some cases in restaurants or convenience stores that they own or whatever. All of them beside an establishment you can wire money to Somalia. So every month, millions of dollars are going to their pockets, and then millions more are being wired to Somalia. In Minnesota, in Minneapolis, please, AJ, look it up. There was a TSA whistleblower. Forget wiring the money. The hell with that. Suitcases full of cash, like mobsters. Our money, taxpayer money, that they scammed, that they stole. Every week, sometimes twice a week. Minneapolis International Airport. Suitcases full of cash. Some cases $1 million. A TSA whistleblower said, I actually saw at times $4, $5, $6 million. And they go to Qatar first, and then from Qatar, they wired the money to Somalia. I mean, suitcases full of millions of dollars of cash every week, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Waltz apparently knows nothing, even though he was told. Jacob Fry, nothing. Keith Ellison, nothing. Ilhan Omar, nothing, even though she's now worth over $30 million. I want to know how many suitcases of cash were going out of Portland, Maine and Lewiston, Maine. I want to know. Because I'm telling you, and I bet you they use Logan Airport to do it. I guarantee you. It was Logan, Qatar. Logan, Qatar. Just like, instead of Minneapolis, Qatar, they just go down to Logan International Airport. Bang, you're in Qatar, full of cash. And this is how much they're stealing from us. And when we say enough, we're going to deport your ass because your guys are a bunch of thieves and criminals and crooks. Okay, you're disgusting. You're scum. No, you should see the emails I'm getting. I'm the racist. I'm the extremist. It's like what J.D. Vance said. Okay, so you want sex offenders in your community? You want murderers and rapists in your community? That's what you want? You want literally embezzlers and thieves, criminals in your community? So you want your welfare programs to be looted and plundered and stolen? You want that? So there's not enough left for Americans? You like that? That's your idea of compassion? AJ, honest to God, if the Republicans in Massachusetts don't beat Healy this year in the election, they're useless. I mean, I don't know how many issues you can have to destroy her in an election campaign. So, AJ, you're more than right. And my question to you, does Pam Bondi have what it takes? Because that's what it is now. The ball is in her court. This is in the DOJ and the FBI. This is no longer Trump. He can only do so much. He's one man. This is the Attorney General and the FBI Director, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. Do they have the stones to put people like Janet Mills and Tim Waltz in jail? What say you?
I don't think she can. I don't think she's got it. First of all, this thing is so big and so out of control There needs to be 4 Pam Bondis reporting to one central person, whether it be Pam Bondi or her replacement. This is out of control. It needs to be reined in, and it needs to be reined in yesterday.
AJ, thank you very much for that call. Robbie in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Robbie, and welcome.
Hi, good morning, Jeff. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Robbie.
I'm a long-time listener, but this is the first time I've ever gotten through to you.
Welcome, Robbie.
Thank you. The Minneapolis thing is disgusting, absolutely disgusting. But this morning when I was listening to you and you talked about the home care fraud in Maine, that really got to me. I'm a retired nurse, 50 years in the business. I've seen a lot of things. People trying to get aid that they can't get, and who really need it. Veterans, elderly, mothers with lots of kids, sick kids who can't get care. The idea of this building holding 10 or 20 businesses, I'm concerned about the landlord. Did he not know this? Did he not report it? He just collected the rents? He holds some responsibility for this too. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I was thinking the exact same thing. At a bare minimum, did you tell the police? Did you file a complaint? Did you say anything? But you see, Robbie, that's the problem. Many Americans are complicit. How many Americans hire illegals? I know you're talking home care, nurses. I understand that. And you're right. To me, it's beyond disgusting because so many people need it and they're being denied it. And these illegals are just stealing all the money. But how many times they hire landscapers, whatever, poultry factories. I could go on and on, construction sites. People hire illegals. People look the other way. And that's the problem. There's just too much money floating around now. Robbie, are you shocked at the extent of the fraud?
Extremely, extremely. And the point is these people are not even being hired illegally. They're not even being hired. These are facades. These are not even businesses that exist. And they're just charging the government, Medicare, Medicaid, for these things, services, car rides, doctor's appointment rides.
You're right. They're just being charged. And they're not doing anything. Okay, I want to read this text and tell me if you agree or disagree. Clearly a conservative, clearly a big Trump supporter, MAGA, a big fan of the show. And this is from 781. Jeff, if only we could have Merrick Garland on our side. We now have state governors openly defying federal operations and helping to organize their residents, both legal and illegal, to obstruct legal arrests of convicted criminals. How long do you think Merrick Garland would allow such behavior to go on before he ordered federal marshals to put these governors, if they were Republicans, in orange jumpsuits? You're a genius. I'm telling you, 781, you're a genius. Okay, if your mother didn't tell you, I'm telling you, you're a genius. To me, I think he's completely right. Now, you're going to say, oh, is the Kuhner man praising Merrick Garland? No, I can't stand the guy. And I'm sure 781 feels the same way. But say what you want about Merrick Garland. Man, Biden's attorney general, they lock him up. The Democrats lock him up. How many J6ers by the end of the first year? I think the number was something like 1,000. By the end of the first year, they had 1,000 arrested grandmas who just walked around the Capitol. So, I need to use the restroom. I'm not kidding. I need to use the restroom. She asked the Capitol police officer. She goes, uses the restroom, comes back, and says, can I take a picture with you? And then she leaves. And they chase her all the way down. I think she lived in Alaska. Correct me if I'm wrong. And at 3, 4 in the morning, they kicked her door down with a SWAT team. They were arresting grandma. Okay? That's Merrick Garland. Hey, say what you want. They went after Trump not once, twice. At the state level, twice at the federal level. Forget governors and mayors. They wanted to arrest a former president of the United States and the leading presidential candidate. His top advisor, Bannon, they locked him up. Peter Navarro, his top trade guy, they locked him up. Michael Flynn, they framed him. They locked him up. His incoming national security advisor. Well, what governors and mayors? So what I'm saying is, can you imagine if he was our SOB? I'm serious. And Garland became our, just, play with me here for a second. He's actually a Republican. He's actually MAGA. He's a conservative. And all right, Merrick, I'll tell you what now. He's converted. Okay, now, we're going to make you Attorney General. Waltz, handcuffs. Fry, handcuffs. Ilhan Omar, handcuffs. Janet Mills, handcuffs. I could go on and on. We need I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. We need a Merrick Garland. Am I wrong? I can't stand the guy. Please don't misunderstand me. But we need a Republican or whatever, a MAGA Merrick Garland. Am I wrong? Because I'll tell you this about the Democrats. They play smash mouth football. We play badminton. They play smash mouth football. You give them the DOJ. You give them the Attorney General's office and the FBI. And man, they come after you with everything they've got. Our people, not so much. George in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, George, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking the call.
My pleasure, George.
In your words, I think it's brilliant. It's savage, yes, in my book. You import the third world, you become the third world. And I listen to other things like most people probably listen to the station. And I've been following Steve Robinson, former Howie guy, in the main wire. And the whole marijuana thing.
George, we've lost you. I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you. You were going on about China, the weed, the cannabis that they're operating up there in Maine, and all of a sudden we lost you, George. All right, let's try it again, George. We lost all contact. George, do we have you back?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. Please go ahead.
I apologize. I apologize. Okay. So the thing that I picked up from the Steve Robinson interviews that he was doing was basically the missing part is the U.S. attorney for the state of Maine. They don't have one. And it seems like that I'm not a legal person. I'm sure there are other people who know far more than me on this whole issue, but it seems like there's a missing game piece in order for them to prosecute a lot of these crimes that's happening in the state of Maine.
Well, George, that is true. That's completely true. They don't have a U.S. attorney. We're short at least 30 U.S. attorneys. Some say as many as 50. And that's ultimately John Thune and Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley is the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they have what they call, which is this ridiculous blue slip tradition in which Democrats get a veto on any U.S. attorneys appointed. And so they will only appoint or allow to be appointed far left Democrat U.S. attorneys. Well, of course, Trump is going to say no, and Pam Bondi is going to say no. So the problem is we can't fill these positions. And Trump has been begging John Thune, practically begging him, saying, look, guys, you got to stop with this blue slip tradition. You've got to get my U.S. attorneys in place. Without U.S. attorneys, we can't we can't do prosecutions, we can't file indictments, I can't put anybody in jail. But Thune is standing with the swamp, and Grassley is standing with the swamp. So, part of it is not completely Pam Bondi's fault, that's true, or Kash Patel. It's other factors as well. And that's Grassley, and that's Thune, and that's the inability of, or their refusal to go against the Democrats and get Trump's U.S. attorneys confirmed. Joining us now, as she always does at this time, she is the co-founder, CEO, and president of Kelly Financial Services. And yes, that is her wonderful name, Kelly. Kelly, how are you?
Good morning, Jeff. I am good. As we head into 2026, a lot of retirees feel uneasy hearing all the talk about taxes, not because they've done anything wrong, but because the rules keep changing and it's hard to know what really applies to them. What we see is that tax confidence doesn't come from predicting Washington. It comes from understanding how your own retirement works right now. Understanding how Social Security, IRAs, and investment income are taxed may not sound interesting, but it can quietly make a real difference. That's why Kelly Financial created an investor guide called Tax Planning in Today's Environment. It explains in plain English how retirement income is taxed and how different income sources affect what you keep after taxes. If you'd like a copy, give us a call or email us at kelly@kellyfinancial.org. Jeff, I'll continue this conversation with our Kelly advisors tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on Safe Money Strategies Radio. Do tune in or visit our website for the Radio Rewind. Jeff, have a wonderful weekend. My best to Grace and the kiddos.
Thank you, Kelly. All the best to you and everyone at Kelly Financial. To get a free copy of that guide, and I urge all of you, if you can, do get it. Call now, 888-800-1881, 888-800-1881, or you can actually email Kelly herself personally, kelly@kellyfinancial.org. That's kelly@kellyfinancial.org. Okay, my friends. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. A couple lines are open if you want to jump on. Just super quick. I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least this story to all of you. What the Democrats now are trying to do to protect their power, to protect their institution of illegal immigration, because that's theirs, and to prevent any serious investigation into the fraud, whether it's in Minnesota, Maine, you name it, is now they need to put the propaganda machine against ICE on overdrive. Sort of like what they did, regarding COVID or Russia collusion, or how they're trying to paint Trump as some genocidal neo-Nazi monster. So what they're doing now is they're looking for any ways to vilify ICE, smear ICE, defame ICE, and knowingly push false or bogus stories. And they try to use children to tug at people's heartstrings. So what they did yesterday, and again, disgusting, is they followed the lead of Elon, some people did something, Omar. So what Ilhan Omar said was just north of Minneapolis, ICE conducted a targeted raid in which they went after and eventually arrested a violent, convicted criminal illegal alien. But this is what Ilhan Omar sent out on X. ICE just detained a 5-year-old child. Don't tell us this is about, quote, the worst of the worst. That's a lie. Absolutely vile. And they show the picture of a young 5-year-old boy with kind of like a bunny rabbit hat, blue bunny rabbit hat in his backpack to pull at people's heartstrings. And right away, it was a coordinated effort. It's clear. It's a coordinated propaganda campaign. NPR, CNN, the BBC, MS Now, New York Times, Washington Post, all of them said, ICE is now arresting 5-year-olds. They're capturing him, detaining him. Oh my God. What could a 5-year-old do that could possibly be violent? What could that be? And the internet was ablaze. The left was going berserk. In fact, people were fearing that they were going to take it to the streets and there was going to be riot after riot. Guess what? It turned out, as usual, that the story was a lie. Or to be more accurate, it was a half-truth where they completely omitted all of the context. I want you to listen now to J.D. Vance. This was J.D. at his press conference, again, brilliant, in Minneapolis yesterday, where an off-mic reporter, one of the first questions he's asked, don't talk to us about ICE. They're arresting a 5-year-old. Listen to J.D. Roll cut 9, Mike.
Asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic messaging event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien. And then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America? If the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one thinks that makes any sense.
And he destroyed the narrative right there. Just blew it up right there. Now, but this is important. People, please, you have to understand this. This scumbag of a father, okay, by the way, he's wanted for domestic violence. So many crimes, okay? So, the child. Look who the child is with, okay? But let that go. He abandons his 5-year-old boy. He abandons him and then is running from ICE. Now, what is ICE supposed to do? There were 4 agents on the scene. They left one behind to take care of the boy. The other 3 pursued and eventually caught up to him, captured him, arrested him, and now he's in custody. But the point is, they're like, oh my God, they detained him. Well, what are they supposed to do with a 5-year-old boy? What, let him freeze in the cold? Let him just wander on the streets? They gave him food. They gave him something to drink. They put him in a nice hot car, a vehicle. And then they asked if there's another relative who's legal who can take care of the boy. And somehow now, this goes from this, which is the most humane thing possible, into now suddenly we're arresting 5-year-olds? So then, now their entire narrative is blown up. They thought they had enough. They thought they had their big riot for this weekend. They thought they were going to get this kid's name, and then they were going to say he's been arrested by ICE. And that city after city was going to blow. Well, now JD popped that bubble. Okay, he popped that balloon. So now they come back and say, well, you're arresting a father in front of his son. This is traumatizing the boy. How can you do that? You can't arrest parents in front of their children. Listen to JD. Roll cut 9A. Mike.
As a child, I saw people in my family get arrested. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking. It's chaotic. It's traumatic for the kids. I could recognize that, and I could recognize that we got to support these kids, while on the other hand saying that just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you get complete immunity from law enforcement. And I think we have to hold both of those thoughts in our head at the same time. We've got to be sympathetic to the kids who are caught up in some of these enforcement actions. We've also got to say we have to enforce the law without bias, with fairness, but we've got to enforce the law.
Look, they couldn't touch him. They couldn't touch him. Now, I'm telling you, this was the buzz among the media after his press conference yesterday. The liberal reporters were saying, we have to do everything in our power to prevent JD from becoming the Republican nominee in 2028 because they can't stop him. I'm telling you, that to a man and a woman, they said, this guy will take MAGA all the way to the finish line. And they know it. They can't outsmart him. They can't outdebate him. They can't outmaneuver him. 617-266-6868. Angela in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Angela, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking my call.
My pleasure, Angela.
I'm in New Hampshire. I reside in Maine, and I just have a couple thoughts about all of this. You know, we, as conservatives, are like yelling and screaming about everything, and we see no action. Everybody's frustration with that we just see no action. But we actually have the power. It's the exact same power we had in COVID that we didn't do anything about, and we still have the power now. They are stealing our money. In Maine, if you make $200,000 a year, you pay $21,000 to the state of Maine in just your property taxes, the illegal theft of the mandatory FMLA contribution, your property taxes. It's the fifth highest, tax burden in the country. And we have that burden of obligation that we pay our taxes. But if 50 million people didn't, what message would that send? It was the same with like business owners unconstitutionally having to close their doors. Dare these people to do something to us. You had a caller earlier that said the Patriots have the power, but we don't do anything. We yell and scream and nothing happens. We get frustrated and we just keep getting kicked in the teeth, but we don't do anything to activate, and we have power in numbers and we just take it, and we shouldn't. If they don't have the money, yes, they'll print it all, but you start auditing these states, these cities, these municipalities, and the fraud will be easy to find. We don't owe $35 trillion in debt. We probably don't even owe half of that. It's all just printed money that's going to theft.
You're completely right. I mean, Angela, your logic is impeccable. Let me ask you this, Angela, as someone who resides in Maine, was this common knowledge that Janet Mills was this corrupt, that these illegal aliens were grifting off the system to such a degree that we're now looking at a massive fraud scandal, probably to the tune of billions of dollars just in Maine alone? Like, I'm just curious, is this now something that's finally opening people's eyes, or was this something people knew but nobody talked about?
Maine's affliction is ignorance. The entire state of Maine is financially supported south of Portland and east of 95. The rest of the state, sadly, looks like the land that time forgot. Thriving communities that used to be mill towns are now abandoned, and you could film scenes from Breaking Bad up there. It is a total welfare state. So the fraud existence, I don't think is unknown. The level of it, who the contributing communities are, probably. But, Janet Mills is so in bed with all these people. Like, her husband and her brother and their other legal firms are the ones that wanted to clear the forests for CMP lines. Like, they're all in bed with each other. It's whether you're exposing the fraud or you've always known if it's there, it doesn't matter. You see the theft and you're like, where's all this money going? Where's 11% from just the state going? When I see communities, I travel all over the state. I go to Machias, I go to Fort Kent, I travel all over the place for my job, and it is unbelievable how terrible it is, and no one cares. Nobody cares. I've got friends that are in DEA that are doing raids in Lewiston. You want to talk about children? They're trying to save children whose parents are ODing on the couch during a DEA raid. Everybody knows, but we never do anything. We never do anything. We just yell
Angela,
and
if
scream.
you don't mind me asking, because I'm up against the clock. When you say everybody knows but nobody cares, and you've got children now in drug-afflicted homes, you've got people hooked on fentanyl and drugs and heroin, and you got parts of the state that are an economic wasteland. Why don't people care? It's their state. It's their community. Do they want these illegals? Do they want these drugs? Do they want people to OD? Do they want to be poor and hooked on welfare? Like, why do so many Mainers not care? What's your theory?
I think a lot of it has to do with the out-of-state influence that's in Maine now. There's the influx of people here from New Jersey, second homes, Connecticut, New York, all these, Massachusetts. They've been living with this sort of fraud in their states like forever. It's sort of like everybody looks at it like, this is the way it's always been, and what can we do about it? And that's what it is.
Wow. Angela, great call. Real eye-opening call. Angela, please don't be a stranger. Call again.